Hi there, and welcome to the Reinvent Your Reality podcast. I'm your host, Jen Palco. Welcome to episode 3 of season 4 of this podcast, where we're in the midst of the health and history series, where today we're going to talk about the history of self-talk. So imagine this. Imagine if all of our inner dialogues were audible on the outside. How deafening would that be? How chaotic would that be? If you could just hear all of the self-talk by everybody in the whole world, it would be like a Twilight Zone episode, right? It would be eerie, I would think. So we all have self-talk. This little voice, this little dialogue that talks to us 24/7 throughout the day. Sometimes it makes stuff up and narratives and stories. And we get very personal with it. But it has the ability to kind of twist or distort reality to some degree. Now, the history of self-talk, it goes back to the 1880s, or the beginning of psychology, you could say, where researchers began studying this and why we talk to ourselves. What are the benefits of it? Where does it come from in the human mind, right? We know we have this inner dialogue that oftentimes is completely the opposite of what our behaviors show or actions show, which is why it would be really scary if we were to just hear everybody's inner dialogue, right? It would be chaos. Like I said, it really would. But the study of inner dialogue, it's been around for as long as people have studied psychology, okay? 1880s researchers began taking an interest in it. And there was somebody in the 1930s by the name of, and I'll probably butcher the name, Lev Vygotsky, a Russian psychologist who formed one of the earliest theories in which self-talk played a role, okay? According to the MIT Press publication, Thought and Language, as well as the Cambridge Handbook of Cultural, Historical, and Psychology by Cambridge University Press, and Oxford RE.com. The earliest theory of self-talk played a role with this Russian psychologist here. He suggested that inner speech develops and becomes the medium of consciousness as children internalize culture and meaning in the form of language. Yavitsky asserted that the capacity for inner speech is necessary for purposeful and independent thinking and action. So basically, our self-talk helps us in how we navigate the world and our experiences, how our brains process this kind of stuff. And what we do, right? So he said we basically have 4 mental functions we're born with: attention, sensation, perception, and memory. And a children's social environment plays a role in allowing these skills to develop and gain higher mental function. So self-talk is actually a positive thing that helps in our cognitive process as we're growing up and going throughout life and socializing with other people. It helps us make sense of the world in other ways. It's our guide. It helps us guide our behaviors and our actions and all that fun kind of stuff. So, So it's not just talking to yourself, friends. It's actually helps you make sense of the world and how you perceive the world. But as we know, self-talk can become twisted. It can twist our reality. Our psyche can bend reality in a sort of way. It really depends, if you look at our brain like a computer, the way we're wired. And it makes you wonder about this stuff. So there are 4 types of self-talk. There's positive self-talk, which helps us gain skills in life, enhances our focus, recognizes our strengths, okay, and our confidence. And number 2, instructional, goes back to gaining skills, enhancing focus, that kind of thing. Motivational, number 3. Motivational is talking yourself into doing something. So it can help in that way where you're like, I can, self-talk, I can. And then this one, number 4, we're going to spend more time on is negative self-talk, because we all know this a little too well. Negative self-talk, which basically focuses on what's wrong with us, our flaws, what we cannot do. And it's this self-deprecating behavior and causes stress and anxiety and fear. So we're going to focus on negative self-talk, how to change some methods to change self-talk, negative self-talk. So there's three C's of self-talk when it comes to being used in cognitive therapy. For example, when somebody's trying to apply it to their negative thinking patterns, they're trying to change negative thinking patterns. So the three C's in therapy is catching, checking, and changing. Okay, catching is being aware of your negative thoughts in the first place. Checking is asking yourself how useful or accurate is this thought. And number three is changing the thought to a more helpful one. So they use that a lot, especially used with children and adolescents to try and change the thinking patterns. Because as we know, how we think, how we talk to ourselves is really, really a big deal. And yeah. So the next thing I want to get into, and a lot of people are going to be asking this, well, when it comes to changing negative self-talk. I'm always talking to myself in a negative light. I'm, always negative thinker. I'm a Debbie Downer on myself. I'm a cynic. I'm all these things. Give me straight up. Do affirmations really work, and how? Do they work? So I'll give you an example. So for many years, I don't know many years, but I used to keep journals years and years ago, and I would write down affirmations over and over and over again, because this I heard was what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to change your negative thinking patterns, and I had negative thinking patterns that I wanted to change, rewire my brain, and I heard that affirmations were a good way to do this. You write down what you want or what you want to believe about yourself over and over and over again. Do they actually work in shifting negative self-talk? And how long before affirmations work? I mean, won't I have an conscious bias? So say if I tell myself I'm beautiful when deep down I think I'm ugly, or I don't believe it, or it doesn't align to my values. How many times do I have to do? I have to say something 7,898 times every morning in the mirror? Do I have to fake it until my conscious eventually just breaks? Well, many studies show that it takes 21 days to form a new habit, although others say it may take as long as 3 to 6 months. Do you have to stare in the mirror? Is it like a fast food commercial or political misinformation where the more you say it, the more you hear it, the more it starts to become truth and I actually believe it? Here's your answer. Yes and no. Yes and no. And I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but yes and no. Okay. One of the theories behind why positive affirmations can work is something called self-affirmation theory in psychology. In other words, we can build our self-integrity by using affirmations. It has to do with our perception on obviously how we talk to ourselves, about ourselves. By nature, we're always trying to protect ourselves from anything on the outside that's threatening our sense of self-integrity. So basically, we build more self-integrity by how we speak to ourselves. So if we're speaking to ourselves in a more positive light, then, we're able to deal with the threats if we have more confidence under our belt, that sort of thing. So self-affirmation theory, it says that our self-identity isn't about perfection, but instead competence in areas that we personally value. So it's about focusing on the things that you already value rather than things that deep down you don't value. Okay. So starting small. So somebody by the name of Claude Steele popularized self-affirmation theory in the late 1980s. It's been well studied. So this is why affirmations might not work for you, don't work for a lot of people, didn't work for me. Because when you're just writing down random affirmations, positive affirmations, you're only working with the conscious mind. So we have the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So oftentimes there's something called, as I mentioned, conscious, unconscious bias. So when you're only working with the conscious mind, It does nothing to actually rewire the subconscious belief system. Basically, think of your brain like a computer. You're trying to rewire the computer by doing stuff superficial. Like you haven't reprogrammed it, You just it's just like a top layer of it. So there's layers to how to shift negative self-talk. And number one is to start with the things you actually believe and value about yourself. What are you now? What do you like about yourself now? What are your strengths right now? What do you value right now? Okay. Those are things that are aligned consciously and unconsciously. So if you are stating something that is completely something that is untrue to what is actually programmed in your computer, it's going to take a lot longer to reprogram it, because you're going to be writing affirmations and you're basically reinforcing your belief set of lack, or that you're not this way, that kind of thing. So that's what they mean by that. Number two, I would say, in shifting negative self-talk, negative thinking, is focusing on self-compassion over magic. Okay, magic meaning, if I write affirmations, 55 times every hour, like I'm just going to magically think differently, be more positive in my life. No, it's about self-compassion. It's not about writing affirmations because where you're fighting with yourself. It's about being nice to yourself. Okay, again, what are your values? Be nice to yourself. Have some compassion. Number three, if it feels forced, stop. That's your cue that you have a conscious, unconscious block. If it feels forced, you feel it in your gut, that's like, all right, I'm writing this down, this affirmation, saying these affirmations, writing down these mantras, and it just doesn't feel right to me. Number four is a good one. Surround yourself with positive influences and kind of limit the Debbie Downers in your life. Maybe you are a Debbie Downer, but that's okay. Surround yourself with more positive things, people who have more vision in their life, people actually kind of like their life, okay, rather than people who are always complaining. And number five is celebrate your small wins. Don't put the focus on only your lack of the big wins in your life. Celebrate what you've already accomplished, what you've already done, what's already great about you. There has to be something, I guarantee there has to be something. So according to an article in Psychology Today, wholesome and unwholesome belief, that is deeply rooted in one's unconscious mind can override a positive affirmation, even if we're unaware of it, okay? So if you have these unwholesome beliefs about yourself that are ingrained, that are wired into your system, it's going to override a positive affirmation that you're just doing on a conscious level, okay? The subconscious is going to always take over, because that's who you really are, who you truly believe. You can fake things on the outside. We all know you could fake things on the outside. You could fake whatever you want on the outside, but deep down, you know what you believe. You know what you stand for. You know what you align with. Okay. Some other ways to shift negative self-talk is, let's see. There was a professor at the University of Houston Graduate College and motivational speaker who did something called the Make It Fun technique, okay? And basically this motivational speaker refers to the negative voices in her head as her gremlins. So by giving her negative thoughts a name, she's both stepping away from them and poking fun at them. So it's making light. Instead of attaching to your negative thought patterns and kind of ruminating over, I don't want to think this way. I don't want to think this way. I don't want to think positive. Think positive. Think positive. That never works. Never works, friends, right? Never works. So what she's saying is to make it fun. Make it fun. Think of each negative thought that pops up as a gremlin, that kind of thing. I had an acupuncture patient a while ago who I was treating, and he said that whenever he had a negative thought, he would view it as like this negative thought bubble in his head. He would imagine it like a little bubble, and then he would blow it up. Not literally, but in his head, he would make it explode and blow up. And I thought that was cool. So whatever works for you in these, when you're ruminating on stuff, when you're having these obsessive thoughts, so let's talk about obsessive thoughts, and people might ask, well, what about like schizophrenia or OCD or obsessive compulsive kind of tendencies. A lot of these could be genetic. For example, schizophrenia. Obviously, there's an imbalance somewhere in the brain chemistry, serotonin, dopamine. It could be genetic, could be environmental. So there's a lot of factors at play there that require more assistance than just doing, say, affirmations or working on surrounding yourself with more positive people. Okay, those go in depth where you need to seek actual medical advice for that kind of thing, because it can be harmful to your system. So our brains are a very complex thing. But if you're the type of person, you sometimes have to be reminded about this inner dialogue and just become aware of it. And when it's kind of taking over your world, and how it's often not rooted in reality. See, we think a lot of things that are not rooted in reality, or we think a lot of things that are not aligned to our actions and behaviors on the outside. And this causes a constant source of stress, in a way, mismatch in our bodies, in our systems. So if we want to rewire ourselves, we really have to be aware in the first place of when these thoughts are popping up. Where are these thoughts coming from? Are they coming from something I was told in the past? Are they coming from a traumatic experience? Why do I believe this about myself? Okay, so before you work on the conscious stuff, you need to look at the unconscious, because that's where the ability to change, the ability to shift, where it lives. Okay, so in a way, you can only, faking it till you make it only gets you so far, because your unconscious beliefs have to align to what you're telling yourself, at least a little bit. Okay, so that's why I say start small with the things that you do value about yourself, the things you do, the strengths about yourself. But anyway, I'm not going to get too far into down the hole here, but I just want to talk about that. The history of self-talk, psychology, how we talk to ourselves really helps us in how we experience the world, how we communicate with other people. It really drives our behaviors, which is most important. It's so important, okay? So if we want to change something about our lives, we have to really be aware of how we speak to ourselves, what that inner dialogue, what that inner voice is telling us. And is it accurate? Is it rooted in reality? Right? The 3 C's. Okay. Be aware of it. Ask yourself, is it relevant? Is it accurate? And then work to shift it in a sort of way. Maybe you want to think of it like a gremlin. Maybe you want to think of it like a thought bubble you're blowing up. I don't know. But anyway, so that's my spiel. Okay. So if you have any thoughts on self-talk, it is an interesting thing how we live inside of our heads a lot of times. We have this whole inner world that never gets exposed. I'd say most people are not completely living aligned, the inner world and the outer world, right? There's always some secret, something we're thinking that other people don't know about, right? Or if have a smile on our face, inside, we may be fuming or saying, I don't like this person, right? There's always some sort of mismatch because we're always trying to meet societal expectations. We're not trying to offend anybody, but we're always judging. We're always judging. People are always judging us. So we always have these conversations in our head. And our brains, they're so complex with the issue of language. If you think about it, we have verbal language on the exterior, but then we have a whole language on the interior that never gets heard except by ourselves. And that's why it can drive us nuts. And the language on the inside is tied to all those ingrained beliefs from our experiences over time. That's the fun part. That's the hard part. That's why it's difficult to rewire ourselves. But really, it's about self-acceptance in the first place. It's not about thinking how awful we are or how we have negative thought patterns. Oh, there's something wrong with me because I think too negatively. Like, I need to think positive. I need to be a certain way. See, we're focusing on our flaws instead of focusing on those things that we do like about ourselves, we do love about ourselves, those things, those values that we can appreciate about ourselves, the little wins, okay? So why are we always focusing on the negative stuff? Why don't we start focusing on what is right with us instead of what is always wrong with us? So I will end it on that. I will end the Health and History series on that note, to just be kind to yourself, be compassionate. If you find yourself obsessing over things in your head, living these narratives and stories in your head, you got to snap yourself back to reality and ask yourself, how rooted in reality is this? How accurate is this? What do I truly value in my life? Anyway, thank you so much for listening. It's been fun doing these first 3 episodes. I'm going to be putting out the next 3 shortly, and I'm thinking it's going to be a co-host series. So that I'm looking forward to, because that's going to be fun. 3 more episodes with not just me, but me and whoever else wants to join me on a podcast here. So thank you so much for listening. Truly appreciate it. Again, make sure you support this podcast. It's on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Of course, it's always up on YouTube. So if you want to listen/watch, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, because I do put out weekly videos on all kinds of cool topics for you. Your support, your subscription, your sharing with your friends truly, truly means a lot and helps this channel grow and helps keep me going. I love to do it and helps keep me going, and knowing that somebody's listening to it, okay, and getting something out of it. That means a lot, and I hope that it does resonate with some of you. So anyway, that's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, peace.